faithfully conveying values and interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, the book we're interpreting for you is Juzheng's Biography. This book is a work by the famous biographer Zhang, introducing and evaluating Juzheng, the Grand Secretary during the Wanli era of the Ming Dynasty. Zhang was a powerful minister in the mid to late Ming Dynasty and a rare famous reformer in Chinese history. His life is like a mirror of the mid to late Ming Dynasty, reflecting all aspects of its politics. Now, let's follow the author to appreciate the turbulent political history of that time. Together, let's delve into this biography of Zhang Juzheng by Zhu Dongrun, which mainly focuses on Zhang Juzheng's political career. But to better understand his actions, Zhang Juzheng's background and family history cannot be skipped. The year 1525, in the fourth year of the Juzheng era of the Ming Dynasty, Zhang Juzheng was born into a military household in Zhongling, Hubei. So-called military households referred to families that served as soldiers for generations for the country, and their status was generally not high. Zhang Juzheng, grandfather Zhang Zhen, was a gatekeeper at the local Liao prince's residence, which was a very low status. To change this, the only hope was for someone in the family to become a high official through the imperial examination, and this hope fell on Zhang Juzheng. Zhang Juzheng showed high talent from a young age. He formally started school at 5 and was well-versed in classics by 10. He had gained some fame locally, his family had hope, and Zhang Juzheng lived up to expectations. At 16, he became the youngest local Zhuren, provincial graduate, which naturally thrilled the Zhang family, but this triggered a tragedy. The son of the Prince of Liao, Zhu Xianji, was the same age as Zhang Juzheng and knew him, but was mischievous by nature. His mother, consort now, wanted to motivate her son, so she invited Zhang Juzheng to a meal. According to the rules, at the time, Zhang Juzheng, being of low birth, could only sit in a lower seat, but consort now deliberately had him sit in the upper seat to warn her son that if he didn't work hard, even this gatekeeper's descendant would surpass him. This made Zhu Xianji feel humiliated, leading to hatred. Zhu Xianji, under the pretext of congratulating Zhang Juzheng on passing the exam, forced Zhang Zhen to drink, and Zhang Zhen actually died from drunkenness. The Zhang family dared not complain, because the power of the Liao prince's residence was too great. Such a background naturally made Zhang Juzheng develop a cautious, steady, and emotionally reserved style of conduct. In 1547, at the age of 22, Zhang Juzheng passed the Jinshi examination and took a position at the Hanlin Academy. He began studying the institutions of past dynasties, seeking the way to govern the country, and observing and analyzing the political environment of the time, hoping to practice his political ideas. I wish you would do it. After 2 years of accumulation, he submitted a memorial to Emperor Juzheng at the time called the Treatise on Current Affairs. In this article, he argued that the dynasty faced several major issues, like the arrogance of the imperial clan, inefficient administration, unstable national defense, and financial deficits, among others. And the root of these problems, as Zhang Juzheng saw it, was Emperor Juzheng's long absence from meeting officials and the lack of communication between the state's upper and lower levels. A sharp insight. So, Emperor Juzheng was obsessed with Taoism at this point, hadn't held court for almost 10 years, and Grand Secretary Yang Song monopolized power, controlling the government. Previously, many ministers advised the emperor against this, only to be exiled, imprisoned, or beaten to death. These people suffered so badly because they directly attacked the Taoist priests favored by the emperor, indirectly criticizing him.
Zhang Juzheng learned his lesson. First, he portrayed the emperor as an enlightened ruler open to advice, winning his favor and making it easier to voice opinions.
So, Even though he expressed dissatisfaction similarly, this article didn't bring Zhang Zhuzheng a death sentence. As for the results, well, naturally there were none. After the article was submitted, it vanished without a trace, with no response whatsoever. This setback made Zhang Zhuzheng realize one thing. Emperor Jia had zero interest in state affairs, and it was impossible for him to achieve much politically for now. He chose silence, doing what he could and letting go of the rest. But 5 years later, a major court event ended this. In this calm state, in 1554, Minister Yang Jisheng, disgusted with the court's decay, bravely exposed Yan Song's crimes to Emperor Jia.
His words were blunt and harsh, infuriating Juzheng, who ordered young Jisheng beaten with 100 strokes and later publicly executed.
Witnessing all this, Zhang Zhuzheng felt the political environment had hit rock bottom, so he decided to temporarily leave the court. That year, citing poor health, he requested a leave to return to his hometown, taking a break from politics. Thus ended his first phase in politics. However, before heading back home, Zhang Zhuzheng, feeling unwilling, still wanted to find someone to confide his thoughts. That person was Xu Ji, Zhang Zhuzheng's direct superior, whose political stance was similar to his, while Yang Song's power loomed large. Over these years, Xu Ji faced marginalization everywhere, but he always stayed quiet, making no statements. Zhang Zhuzheng left Xu Ji a letter advising him not to overthink things and to dare to confront Yan Song. If Xu Ji gave the order, he was willing to risk his life to join the fight. This promise naturally moved Xu Ji, who saw him as a trusted confidant for future important matters. After returning to his hometown, Zhang Zhuzheng gained more observations and reflections on social realities. 3 years later, in 1557, Zhang Zhuzheng returned north to the capital, ultimately committing to politics as his sole lifelong pursuit. Soon, history opened new doors for Zhang Zhuzheng. In 1561, fireworks set by Emperor Jia at Yangshou Palace caused a fire. He wanted to rebuild Yangshou Palace. Grand Secretary Yan Song opposed it due to high costs, while Xu Ji suggested using leftover materials from other palace repairs, completing the project successfully with minimal expense. Over this incident, Yang Song lost imperial favor while Xu Ji gained promotion, his influence growing.
As court lines shifted, officials reported Yan Song's illegal activities like selling offices and titles.
Finally, Yan Song was dismissed from office in 1562. Xu Ji replaced Yan Song as Grand Secretary, and Zhang Zhuzheng's court status rose accordingly. Xu Ji first recommended Zhang Zhuzheng as right supervisor of the household of the heir apparent Yu Chengfeng, and then as drafter Zhong Yun, concurrently serving as director of the National Academy, Civ of Guozijian. The first position involved serving as literary attendant to the crown prince. The second position was equivalent to second in command at the nation's highest academic institution, like a dean of academics. By 1566, with Shouji's strong support, Zhang Zhuzheng was promoted to head of the Hanlin Academy. That same year, Emperor Jia passed away, and Emperor Longqing ascended the throne. Recommended by Xu Ji and another key cabinet member, Gao Gong, Zhang Zhuzheng became left vice minister of personnel and grand secretary of the Donggay Pavilion in 1567, joining the cabinet in decision-making. In just 5 years, Zhang Zhuzheng flourished in officialdom, accomplishing much with distinction and gaining rising prestige at court. Seeing his foundation stabilized, Zhang Zhuzheng submitted the memorial on 6 matters to Emperor Longqing in 1568. He argued that the emperor should dare to stop endless bureaucratic squabbles, starting with streamlining officialdom to improve administrative efficiency. To reform the bureaucracy, the cabinet must take the lead, since it heads all officials. But the cabinet still maintained the contentious atmosphere of the Jia era, locked in power struggles. This left Zhang Zhuzheng feeling helpless. convinced the existing system needed major surgery, and this reform became a contest between Zhang Juzheng and Gao Gong. Zhang Juzheng and Gao Gong originally had a good relationship. When working at the National Academy, Gao Gong was Zhang's superior and thought highly of him. Later, when Zhang entered the cabinet, Gao Gong also helped. But Gao had a strong personality and was vindictive. Not long after taking charge of the cabinet, he seized all power. Between 1570 to 1571, he successively expelled 4 grand secretaries. Later, he targeted the retired Shu Ji, using Shu's family legal violations to arrest his 3 sons and confiscate their farmland. This made Zhang Zhuzheng uneasy. He thought, if Gao wouldn't spare Shu Ji, a senior minister who served the court for years, how much less would he spare himself with far less seniority and contribution? Plus, with Shu Ji being closer to Zhang, it naturally made Zhang view Gao as a rival. But how to topple Gao Gong? At this point, a eunuch played a key role. In the Ming cabinet, eunuchs drafted documents for the emperor. After the emperor reviewed them, he'd have eunuchs write comments and affix seals. Then after delivery processes, the documents took effect. During the Zhang-Gao power struggle, the eunuch most likely to handle these tasks was Fen Bao. Gao Gong, fearing Fen's growing influence, desperately recommended others. But they were incompetent and failed to replace Fen, instead making Feng resent him. In 1572, Emperor Longqing was terminally ill. He summoned Zhang Juzheng, Gao Kong, Empress Li, Consort Li, and the Crown Prince, with Feng Bao reading the imperial will. Gao Gong claimed Feng Bao read the will when the emperor was already unconscious, implying it had been tampered with. Empress Li, Consort Li, and the Crown Prince present raised no objections, so Gao had to accept the Crown Prince's succession, who became the Wanli Emperor. He appointed Feng Bao to handle writing comments, affixing seals, and other tasks. Provoked, Gao Gong actually said the 10-year-old emperor understood nothing, claiming Feng Bao must have manipulated things behind the scenes. Gao Gong's disregard for the new emperor was a huge vulnerability. Feng Bao used this against him, dismissing Gao from all positions and sending him back to his hometown.
As for Zhang Zhuzheng, throughout this, he stayed on the sidelines and eventually replaced Gao Gong as Grand Secretary, successfully stepping into the political spotlight.
Zhang now had full opportunity to demonstrate his abilities. At this time, the Ming dynasty was a complete mess, mainly politically and economically. Politically, there was personnel instability, with officials lacking execution in their duties. Take the cabinet, for instance. From 1562, when Yan Song was dismissed, to 1572, when Zhang Zhuzheng took power, there were 4 grand secretaries in just 10 years, which inevitably affected the government's administrative capabilities. Economically, powerful nobles occupied vast lands. For example, Shuji's family alone once held 240,000 mu of land, yet they had privileges to reduce or exempt taxes. As a result, the state had little money, and other matters naturally couldn't function properly. To clean up this mess, the situation required breaking conventional norms. Therefore, during his administration, a grand reform unfolded vigorously. This reform can roughly be divided into 2 stages, targeting political and economic aspects respectively. The first stage was between 1573 and 1577, during which Zhang Zhuzheng focused primarily on politics. To strengthen centralization, enforce laws strictly, and enhance government execution capabilities. First, let's look at strengthening centralization. As mentioned earlier, in his memorial on 6 matters, Zhang Zhuzheng suggested starting reform by streamlining the bureaucracy. But as the head of officials, the cabinet lacked the ability to push this forward. Zhang Zhuzheng saw this as a systemic flaw. The founding emperor of the Ming dynasty, Zhu Yuanzhang, abolished the position of prime minister and made all decisions himself. although later emperors found it overwhelming and established the cabinet, essentially hiring a group of secretaries to share administrative duties. But legally, the cabinet only acted on orders, lacking real power, thus unable to drive reform. Zhang wanted to change this but couldn't violate the ancestral institutions set by Zhu Yuanzhang, which was somewhat challenging. After much thought, he decided to implement the Cao Fa Performance Evaluation Law. At that time, the central government had 6 ministries, and there were also 6 offices supervising the corresponding ministries. The Cao Fa required the ministries to register all official affairs in triplicate, one as the master copy, one sent to the offices, and one given to the cabinet. Then, deadlines were set, and relevant departments were ordered to complete tasks within the deadlines, or face punishment. On the surface, this just reformed the process of handling official affairs, but in reality, it increased the cabinet's power. The cabinet had a record of all official matters, and so did the offices. And they also had a record of how well official affairs were handled? No, the cabinet only needed to reconcile accounts with the offices, and then the offices would urge the ministries to execute. In this way, the cabinet controlled the ministries through the offices. Originally, the rules set by Zhu Yuanzhang only required the offices to control the ministries. Zhang didn't change this directly, but in practice, he expanded the cabinet's power to urge administrative implementation. After strengthening centralization, it's time to enforce the law strictly and boost government authority. The most effective approach here is to crack down on law-breaking nobles. Back then, many imperial relatives caused havoc in regions, like that prince of Liao, Zhu Xianji, who acted lawlessly around Jiangling, even letting his men kill officials.
And he sheltered the perpetrators.
Through Zhang's efforts, Zhu Xianji's title as Prince of Liao was revoked. In the politically complacent mid to late Ming period, this was a rare major event. Additionally, in many daily administrative tasks, Zhang also worked hard to uphold the law. For example, the rectification of post stations. They were places specifically for providing lodging and meals to officials on business, usually set up along major transportation routes. They're obviously set up. According to rules, they could only be used with credentials for extremely urgent military or state affairs. And by the time Emperor Wanli ascended the throne, this rule gradually became a dead letter. In 1575, Zhang demanded strict enforcement of this rule and proactively targeted his own family. His younger brother Zhang was seriously ill and heading home. A local official wanted to help by letting him use a post station. Zhang stopped it immediately upon finding out and sent a letter stating his stance. The descendants of Confucius used to go to the capital annually to pay tribute, harassing post stations along the way. Zhang simply reduced their visit frequency. After a round of rectification, the situation at post stations improved significantly. In 1580, Emperor Wanli sent an imperial relative to Mount Wudong to seek deities for an early birth. Although an official business for the emperor, this imperial relative dared not use a post station. As the cabinet's power grew and the authority of the law became evident, political issues were resolved. Thus, the reform entered its second stage from 1578 to 1582. In this stage, Zhang mainly tackled economic issues, with the most notable achievement being tax reorganization. As mentioned earlier, in the mid to late Ming, officials and nobles annexed vast lands, enjoyed tax reduction privileges, leading to empty state coffers. Zhang pushed for remeasuring all land nationwide to combat underreporting and tax evasion, and later implemented comprehensive tax and labor reforms. The so-called tax and labor system consisted of 2 parts. Tax, which was the levy paid by the people. Among taxes, the main one was land tax, based on the amount of land owned. while labor referred to various obligatory services borne by the people, such as repairing dikes, transporting supplies, raising horses for the government, cooking for official schools, and so on. Zhang Juzheng then implemented the single whip reform nationwide. Basically, it merged labor services and most taxes into the land tax, uniformly calculated by land area and collected in silver. The benefits were obvious. Those owning vast lands had to pay these transferred taxes. Ordinary folks' burdens lightened, while government land tax revenue greatly increased, easing the court's financial crisis. After achievements in politics and economics, Zhang further strengthened national defense, actively trained troops, planned military facilities, and improved relations with neighboring states to ensure stable development. After about 10 years of effort, Zhang Zhuzheng revitalized the entire nation. This is clear from data comparisons. In late Jia reign, state granaries had barely enough reserves. During the one-year Longqing era, fiscal deficits exceeded one-third. But by 1582, the 10th year of Lan Li, granaries held at least 10 years' worth of grain, with silver reserves amounting to about 4 million taels. Reform brought Zhang Zhuzheng the pinnacle of his life. Yet, behind this glory, a crisis was brewing. Since reforms threatened vested interests, opponents naturally rallied against him. When Zhang first implemented the performance evaluation law and rectified post stations, many petitioned Emperor Wanli, claiming reforms were too rushed, hurting officials' morale and national vitality. Also, others blamed earthquakes and disasters on reforms, angering heaven, demanding immediate halt and stripping Zhang's power. Against these attacks, Zhang struck back fiercely, imprisoning critics so reforms could continue. But this was merely the prelude to struggle.
Opponents resolved to exploit any Zhang-related incident to destroy him.
In 1577, the famous mandate override incident erupted over whether Zhang should observe mourning leave. What's mandate override? Traditional rites required officials to resign and observe 3 years mourning upon a parent's death. With imperial approval, one could continue serving while mourning or return early. This was mandate override. In 1577, Zhang Zhuzheng's father passed away. Reforms were at a critical juncture. Zhang's departure would derail many measures. At this point, officials supporting reform advocated for the mandate override. Zhang Zhuzheng himself had no intention of resigning. The underage Wanli emperor couldn't do without him, and personally wrote to retain him, making the override inevitable. But opponents saw a rare opportunity and pressured Zhang under the guise of upholding filial piety. Zhang momentarily faced a dilemma, but Emperor Wanli firmly insisted he stay.
Zhang even declared that even 100 memorials couldn't change his stance.
To mourn his father, Zhang forfeited his salary, avoided celebrations, and wore mourning clothes at home. Yet opponents still attacked him, calling his actions a power-hungry performance, worse than beasts. If Zhang couldn't fulfill this basic duty of mourning his father, they argued, he certainly couldn't govern the nation. Opponents attacked from moral high ground, invoking traditional rights. Backed by imperial support, Zhang severely punished reform opponents. Some were publicly caned, court beating, others demoted to commoners or exiled to the military. Emperor Wanli issued an edict warning that any criticism of the override would be met with execution. Thus, opposition forces could no longer resist openly and went underground. Through such resolve, Zhang gained immense authority and advanced reforms. But no matter his power, he ultimately answered to the emperor. Reform's sustainability depended on the throne. Right. Logically, Emperor Wanli supported Zhang's reforms since they enriched the state and secured his rule. But this was only one side.
So what was the other side?
It was the subtle shift in the emperor-Zhang relationship under power dynamics. When enthroned under age 10, Wanli hadn't tasted power's sweetness. He held a childlike reverence for Zhang as his mentor. In both studies and court politics, He submitted to Zhang's direction, even seeking his approval.
But people grow, develop their own desires, and as emperor, Wanli couldn't tolerate being controlled forever.
In 1579, the 16-year-old Emperor Wanli felt short on money and ordered new coins minted for personal use. But the Ming dynasty was facing severe currency overissuance and inflation. Emperor Wanli didn't care at all, only focused on his personal coffers. When Zhang Juzheng learned of this, he immediately advised against it, naturally displeasing the adult emperor. Gradually, he realized everyone around him seemed like Zhang Juzheng's proxies. Emperor Wanli's mother, Empress Dowager Li, was strict with her son, but uniquely, she often used Zhang Juzheng's name to instruct the emperor. Feng Bao, who raised Wanli from childhood and should have been his closest ally, was Zhang's supporter, often reporting the emperor's private matters to Zhang. Such constraints made the emperor irritable, leading him to harshly punish minor mistakes. Quote, Boston bow, bow, bow. Yet Zhang Juzheng remained completely oblivious to the emperor's complex emotions. To him, this was just the emperor's youthful vigor and hot temper, nothing abnormal. Predictably, their relationship's rupture was only a matter of time, awaiting a trigger. In 1580, that trigger finally appeared. With Zhang handling state affairs, the idle emperor amused himself. One day, drunk, he demanded a young eunuch sing folk songs. The eunuch, perhaps stubborn, refused, something the emperor couldn't tolerate. To salvage dignity, he drew his sword to behead the eunuch, but under persuasion, settled for cutting his hair. Feng Bao reported this to Empress Dowager Li, who ordered the emperor to kneel while berating him harshly, even hinting at deposition. After Zhang Juzheng pleaded, the Empress Dowager relented, ordering the emperor to write self-criticisms. One submitted to Zhang's cabinet. After consulting Feng Bao, Zhang severely punished those who encouraged the emperor's mischief. It ended with Emperor Wanli's submission, but his fury peaked. The emperor felt Feng Bao exploited this to suppress his leisure, purely personal matters, and Zhang had meddled unnecessarily. Being forced to write self-criticism was self-humiliation, the ultimate disgrace.
Given the chance, he would inevitably seek fierce revenge.
In 1582, Zhang Juzheng died of illness. With shackles removed, Emperor Wanli finally began his path of vengeance. About half a year after Zhang Juzheng's death, eunuchs near the emperor reported Feng Bao's immense wealth. Emperor Wanli confiscated Feng Bao's property, demoted him to Nanjing, expelling him from the power center. Since Feng Bao was Zhang's supporter, this purge naturally signaled the emperor's stance toward Zhang Juzheng. Long-suppressed opposition officials seized the moment, collectively attacking Zhang, accusing him of arrogance, profiteering, and embezzlement during his rule. Seeing public opinion formed in April 1583, Emperor Wanli stripped Zhang of all titles, dismissed his sons, and ordered officials to raid Zhang's ancestral home. During the raid, the Zhang family was locked in an empty room. Over 10 starved to death. But the raid yielded less than expected. Little gold or silver was found.
Officials in charge, fearing failure, resorted to torture.
Zhang's eldest son, Zhang Jingshu, unable to endure beatings, falsely claimed 300,000 plus taels were hidden elsewhere, leading to more raids on innocent families. Zhang Jingshu eventually took his own life. The Zhang family was utterly destroyed. With Zhang purged, all his policies, except those benefiting imperial coffers, were discarded. Post-station controls loosened. The performance evaluation law was abolished. All officials Zhang had promoted were dismissed. The immensely powerful Zhang Juzheng met utter ruin after death. Despite this tragic end, author Zhu Dongrun held Zhang in high esteem. He believed few politicians in Chinese history matched Zhang Juzheng's achievements. In that era, only Zhang brought stability, offering hope amidst chaos. Modern readers might struggle to grasp this significance. This 300,000-character book was conceived in 1941, written in 1943. Zhu completed it in just 7 months. Remarkably fast for an era without computers and scarce research materials. This speed stemmed from Zhu's passion during World War II's darkest days. He felt national suffering and yearned for collective strength. Oh, when's the word? Zhu channeled these emotions into Zhang's reforms, using history to critique his present, accelerating the book's completion. Thus, at the book's conclusion, Zhu Dongrun passionately declares, "Advance, every son and daughter of the Chinese nation," highlighting the theme of inspiring national revival through Juzheng's story. In this sense, this isn't an ordinary biography. Originally titled The Grand Biography of Juzheng, Grand Biography is reserved only for historically pivotal figures. This title alone reveals Zhu's extraordinary emotional investment in Zhang. Zhu poured tremendous effort into its creation. He meticulously studied Ming institutions, cited extensive sources, crafting both a brilliant strategist's portrait and a multidimensional era, valuable for modern Chinese biographical literature. Understanding this requires examining Zhu's creative approach. Zhu studied at London's Southwest College. After returning in 1916, he taught at Wuhan University and Central University. In 1939, Zhu planned to research Chinese biographical literature and create new works. His research critiqued classical biographies like Records of the Grand Historian, limited era portrayal, narrow focus on few events.
Sometimes cramming multiple figures into mere thousands of characters, glaringly superficial.
Western biographies, he noted, spanned 100,000 to millions of words, depicting eras, psyches, allies, and enemies to contextualize subjects. This comprehensive approach inspired him to adapt Western methods for Chinese figures. Zhang Juzheng biography became a successful experiment. Today's biographies commonly use this era, contextualized, multi-character approach, now standard. But during Zhu's writing era, this represented a paradigm shift. Naturally, Zhu didn't stop with Zhang Juzheng. After that, drawing from his classical literature research background, he wrote biographies of Lu Yu, Mei Yao Chen, and others, continuing to focus on figures who profoundly influenced China. Notably, his biography of Yuan Haowen was completed at age 90. These works, alongside Zhang Juzheng's biography discussed today, collectively advanced Chinese biographical literature and are truly worth reading. Understood. All right, that concludes our interpretation of Zhang Juzheng's biography. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.